let's talk about inflammation and long COVID. A recent study from Imperial College London concluded that post-viral fatigue results into an inflammatory response in the body, and that results in persistently elevated inflammation markers in the body. And different parts of the body react differently. The gut-brain axis is affected by a protein called SCG3, and there are different pathways that affect brain fog and neuroinflammation, different pathways that affect heart and respiratory conditions, and different again for chronic inflammation, which they believe to affect the immunity pathways and is part of what happens with fatigue and persistent fatigue. There's so much we still don't know about long COVID, but this is promising research. So why am I talking about inflammation and long COVID? Because I believe that managing my inflammation, or I'm going to say stress, because stress affects inflammation. The more stressed you are, the higher your inflammation gets. So when you manage your stress, you also lower your inflammation markers. And what the ancients have known for a very, very long time is that the meditative traditions are a time-tested way to lower your inflammation markers, to lower your stress, and it's beneficial. And I believe that my meditative practice, my yoga meditation practice, has been a core part of my healing. Now, I am not going to underplay the medical interventions, the multiple teams of doctors, both traditional medical as well as holistic, contributed to my healing. And certainly, you know, the work that was done on my respiratory system and the work that was done from a dietary perspective and to move to anti-inflammatory diet have been core to my healing. But one key plank, which I believe has kind of given me more and more capacity over time since I stopped my medical interventions and I titrated my medications, I believe, and I'm seeing benefits that go on as I continue my daily practice, that my meditative practice has been a core part of my healing. So, how does meditation help with inflammation? Well, one of the core things to remember is that inflammation is a stress response, and a stress response provokes the sympathetic nervous system. That's the flight-flight response. That flight-flight response, that sympathetic arousal, is part of the human condition. But the issue is that when it's set to high all the time and we can't switch it off, and we can't invoke the parasympathetic nervous system to rest, digest, and relax and switch off this kind of response, and we're persistently stuck in chronic overload, chronic stress, what happens is that the cortisol shoots through the roof and the body compensates by showing distress through chronic inflammation. And these are some of the reasons why chronic stress is not so good for you. So if we take the approach that long COVID is a persistent inflammation response that might be linked with stress somehow, but affecting the stress pathways, the sympathetic nervous system, managing that can help manage some of the inflammatory responses, and certainly my inflammatory markers are lower these days. So the first one is pratyahara, sense withdrawal. And the practice of pratyahara is stillness, withdrawing the senses, and it's not overloading yourselves with the constant bombardment of blue screen and social media and doom scrolling, because that just sets the brain to kind of alert status, and the brain doesn't know how to switch off. And when you've got blue light shining in your eyes, that affects your production of melatonin and tells the brain it's not time to sleep yet, because the light's still shining in your eyes and the blue light's telling the eyes and the brain it's not sleepy time yet, it's not switch off time yet. So the brain never gets a chance to pause, stop, and relax. So one of the first things I had to learn was pratyahara, discipline, to manage moments of silence, to give my poor brain a chance to recover and relax whilst it was being taxed with brain fog. Another method is dhyana, focus. In the meditative traditions, we often practice breath work and with mantra in meditation. And breath work and breath training is important because we learn to lengthen the breath and extend the breath and manage the breath through pranayama, breathwork practices. And this helped my respiratory issues, almost as much as singing, in fact. And as my breath training improved my breath, I was able to focus more because I wasn't worried about laboring my breath and running out of breath. And my favorite technique is yoga nidra, and it's a form of systemic relaxation. And you might experience this as rotation of consciousness around points in the body, systemic muscle relaxation even. And what this does is it deliberately invokes the parasympathetic nervous system. So it is lying down and going through kind of awareness of points in the body, either through the rotation of consciousness or by systemically tightening and loosening the muscles, so that the body learns to relax. And done daily, along with breath training, with sandbag or otherwise, I believe that kind of helped teach my body what it felt like to be still and to relax and to kind of ease off on some of that stress and some of those inflammatory pathways. And one, very infamous technique that we use often in yoga and meditation is Agnisara. And that's where we adopt a pose where we churn the belly to exercise the stomach area, the navel area, to kind of get the organs there to kind of release some of the tension, some of the toxins that might have built up there. And I've definitely found that when I practice Agnisara regularly, that helps clear my mind. I have greater awareness and clarity and energy when I do that. But though I do have to be careful about doing it at night, because don't need to be raring to go late night. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is what comes through meditative silence. When we find dhyana, when we find pure awareness and stillness. And that ability to rest in the present moment, to let my anxieties fall away, to let myself fully rest in being. That, I believe, help calm my mind, my brain, and my body, as much as lying in yoga nidra, breath training with a breath pillow, but that ability to sit with myself and be calm and imbue a state of calm throughout my presence. That, I believe, was my beginning to heal. So what I'm here to share with you is this. Just because you have long COVID doesn't mean you're doomed to a life of exhaustion, permanent brain fog where you can't respond to text messages, let alone remember the name of the person who's just walked in through the room. And it doesn't mean that you have issues with digestion and diet, and your body can get better. And I say this knowing that there are people who have real long-term consequences from having COVID and long COVID. And I am one of the fortunate ones who's been able to recover. But what I am saying is this, that there are techniques and there are ways and pathways to ease some of the challenges that you are experiencing with long COVID. Just because you have brain fog, fatigue, gut-brain issues, respiratory issues, doesn't mean that you have to wait another 5 years for the next authorized drug to come on market to help you. My suggestion is look at meditation. There are different techniques, different pathways to perhaps also help you in the way that I have found beneficial too.